Everybody know that we are, Senator Hickman couldn't be here this afternoon, so I'm going to be sitting in as vice chair of the committee. And right now, we're going to wait a few minutes until we have a quorum present before we proceed with the business of the day. So right now, we're just kind of stand at ease. Hickman was not here today, like I said, so therefore I am chairing the committee as vice chair. And opening up, I will call on Senator Sessler, if you'll lead us in a word of prayer.
Thank you. Mike, so. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, we love you so much, Lord. We thank you for all that you've given us. Lord, you've blessed our state with so much. I pray that we would, Lord God, follow you, follow your spirit, follow your wisdom in all of our deliberations today, and glorify you in all that we do. We pray this in your holy name. Amen.
Thank you. All right, we have two bills on the agenda today. We have SB 4, which is Senator Dozal's bill, and also SB 152. So I'll just go ahead and open it up for you, Senator Dozal. You go ahead and just present Senate Bill 4.
Sure, thank you, Chairman, members of the committee. Bring before you Senate Bill 4. I'm working off of LC 492201S, which is a committee sub that incorporates a number of changes that I discussed with the Georgia School Board Association. And in fact, all of the changes that we discussed in that meeting are in this committee sub. The bill does a number of things. Before I do that, I want to just kind of talk about the current state of play as it relates to the core topic of this bill, which is Board of Education training. So currently in the state of Georgia, if you're elected to the Board of Education, you are required by state law to attend 15 hours of training the first year after your election, and you're required to attend 9 hours of training every subsequent year in office until your next reelect, and then you start over. So in a 4-year term, you're 15 hours year 1, then 9 hours year 2, 9 hours year 3, 9 hours year 4. There is no other elected body that we place that requirement on as it relates to the annualized training. County commissioners have 18 hours of initial training, and then they are done. Mayors and city councilmen have it, but it looks like the code is silent on the amount of time. Of course, we have no mandated training. And then, interestingly enough, the state Board of Education members have no training required, nor does the state school superintendent. So this bill does a couple of different things, and I'll get to the training piece in just a second. But the first thing, if you look on lines 19 through 24, we clarify that the role of the Board of Education is to hold the local school superintendent accountable in the performance of his or her duties. The language that we're striking there came into the code about 15 years ago, and it introduces for the only place in Georgia code this concept of micromanaging, which is undefined. And that has caused some issues in some local boards of education where it's created a rift where the superintendent says they're micromanaging. One person's micromanaging is another person's holding one accountable. So we strike that undefined micromanaging section just to provide some clarity in the code around the role. On lines 43 through 51, the current state model for the ethics code for elected boards of education provides for fellow members to file an ethics complaint against another member, but does not provide a mechanism for a taxpayer to file an ethics complaint. And so it places board members in the awkward position that if they are made aware of something, that they are the ones that actually have to file. Now, that is just a model code. A local municipality, local board of education can adopt a different code if they'd like to, but what we do here is we require, if you look at line 48 and 49, we provide for individuals who are 18 years of older and who reside in the local school system can file a complaint with the local school superintendent alleging a violation. I will tell you there's been some feedback. Some people have said they don't like that the complaint needs to be filed with the superintendent. The reason I have it filed with the superintendent is that is currently where the model code of ethics has the board members filing an intra-board complaint to the superintendent. But if the committee wants to just say that it should be filed with the system, I would be fine with that change. I don't know if anybody's going to speak to that or not. I think that there was some concern there. I heard concern in the hallway that it places the superintendent in an awkward position if the ethics complaint is filed with them because they have to work with the board. The reality is right now that is also where current ethics complaints have to be filed, which is why we did it that way. There's nothing special to that in my mind. Lines 91 through 93, now we're getting to the section on the statewide training mandate. Lines 91 through 93 get rid of the years 2, 3, and 4 training. So those 9-hour training increments that are unique to boards of education would be struck. They would be required to keep their every 4 year if they're reelected or if they're selected once. Their first year, let's call it the first year of term training is probably the more accurate way to say it, at 15 hours. It also keeps in place the required training for school districts that have been recognized as high risk. But the thing that we do get rid of there is the years 2, 3, and 4 of the training that, again, is a unique mechanism to boards of education in the state of Georgia. We then have a series of things on lines 97 through 123 that outlines things that must be covered in that training. And that ranges everything from code of ethics, funding sources, the accreditation process, what the community relations with the board meetings, parliamentary procedure, et cetera. We then have on lines 128 to 139 a series of things that cannot be taught in the training, such as that local boards of education are encouraged, expected, or required to act unanimously. The local boards of education are not authorized to request information from the local school system administrators. We have there's a half a dozen or so things in there that we preclude from being included in the training. And then lastly, we have a provision that if a provider, and there are a lot of providers for this training, we all know GSBA, but there are a lot of other providers that provide this training in the state, that if you do not adhere to these, that you will not be an approved provider for a period of 3 years. And that is the summation of the bill. Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. I did have a question on the ethics. It was on, who did you say that ethics complaints are now filed with?
So right now, the way that it works is the state Board of Education adopts a model code of ethics. Each local Board of Education adopts their own. What I have seen in just polling random ones is they all seem to adopt the state model. Now, there may be some out there that tweak the state model or adopt their own, but it seems like the state model, and it would make sense if that's a state model, that you would probably want to adhere to that. The current code, the state model code of ethics, only allows a fellow board member to file an ethics complaint. So if the 5 of you were the 5 Board of Education members and there was an ethics, the only way that an ethics violation could be filed would be for one of your 4 fellow board members to file it against you. What this does is this goes to what I think is a much more common practice as it relates to ethics complaints. Our ethics law allows this. My county commission, I assume most of those allow citizens to file ethics complaints as well. And that's the only change here, is really that we would allow taxpaying citizens within the district. We thought it was important to make it only those within the district, so you didn't have somebody kind of meddling from outside of a district that did not have a vested interest in that area, but that's the change there.
And who do those complaints get filed with? I mean,
that would be up to whatever the local would be. We have in here the superintendent, because that's the current, I guess, receiver of the ethics complaints in the state model code, but I'm not married to that being the case.
Okay.
If we want to strike that and say local school system, the main intent here is to open the door for taxpayers to file an ethics complaint in addition to the current model code, which is just current Board of Education members.
do we have any other questions from the committee? What number are you down there? Or number 11?
11.
There you go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you so much. We need to really monitor what's going on in our school districts, and especially the boards of education and the superintendents that are in charge of the districts. I like the fact that citizens can file the complaints. I'm questioning giving the complaints to the superintendent. Is that only, or?
As currently written, that is only, but I would be open to a change. The way that I would think that you could widen that if you wanted to and really allow the locals to make that decision would just be to file a complaint with the local superintendent, to file a complaint with the local school system. And I don't see Michael in the room, but Michael helped me draft this, and I think that would be an acceptable change.
And that's because, may I continue, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
In a couple of my districts, I find that the superintendent is much more powerful than the Board of Education.
100%.
And that is destructive. It's as if the superintendent is in charge of everything. So in order to keep it open and above board and representative from the, what number? We've had your,
Oh, yes,
Randy.
You and the
We've had,
good chair lady and I have discussed this.
yes,
Yes.
many times the last few days even. So I would love
I would
to
welcome that
see
as a
it.
friendly amendment.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the author, you had referred to this idea of micromanaging the superintendent. I've got a what I believe is 20-2-61 pulled up on my phone. How do we affect that in your bill? Because I think I have deep trouble with that language in that code section.
Yeah, if you look at line 20 of the bill, we strike it, we don't strike it, but we strike shall not be the role of the local board of education or individual members of school board to micromanage the superintendent in executing his or her duties.
Okay.
That's the first thing that we do.
I see
Secondly, down line 23, we further strike provided that the requesting, reviewing financial data document shall not constitute micromanaging. So we eliminate this micromanaging, this 15-year-old micromanaging concept that I think was a response to a pendulum swing that the former legislatures felt needed to bring some Board of Education members in line. To Senator Sims's comment, I think that perhaps that pendulum has swung too far, and there needs to be a little bit more
Yeah.
of an equal system with.
I mean, Mr. Chairman, and to the author, I asked the rhetorical question, do we feel like we've got local representation in our school boards? I feel like engaged, thoughtful, informed citizens feel utterly powerless in the face of an administration that, as I see in my school boards, that I represent and that are around us, they control the flow of information to school board members. I mean, the provision of this that talks about, you know, I don't know the exact reference point here. I'm just concerned that there's no ability for school board members to get their hands on data which they would use to even hold the superintendent accountable. If they're holding them accountable with information that is solely provided through the one channel, it's, to me, representation in our school boards is a farce right now. And I know that sounds like strong language, but I mean, informed, engaged, thoughtful citizens are completely flummoxed. It's to the point that there seems to be no public input. I applaud you for what you're doing. I just wanted to say in front of Georgia and everybody, I am concerned at a foundational level, the ability for there to be public trust and public input through the democratic process to our education system in general because of this issue.
Senator, I would tell you that the impetus for me bringing this bill was from hearing not only from my own Board of Education members, from other Board of Education members around this state, that as they went through the school board training upon newly elected, you get elected, right? You're excited. Your citizens have just voted you in. You get to go represent your students and citizens on the Board of Education. You go to this training, and you are told, according to them, some summation of, you are not the expert, the superintendent is, do what they say, go be a house plant, vote unanimously, don't ever disagree in public, don't ever ask any questions. You hire the superintendent, and then you get out of the way and let them run the show. So I would point you specifically to a couple of things that we did in this bill. With that in mind, on line 128, I already read that out loud, we say that the trainers cannot tell these newly elected local Board of Education members that they're required to act unanimously, which I know for me locally, my local Board of Education members were under the impression after they went through training that it would be best for them to vote unanimously. Yeah. We say that they should not be told that they're not authorized, to your point, to request information from local school system administrators, because I heard that they were told, you know what, you don't need to go ask for any information. And then lastly, or not lastly, but lastly to your question, they are banned from teaching at this training. The local boards of education shall defer to the local superintendent on budget and tax matters, which I have seen happen. And we want our boards of education to be engaged, and they should actually be told the opposite, in my opinion, in the training. I think very similar to the way that we have a governor who sets a revenue estimate here and presents a model budget. We then have the full autonomy to go through that budget, not with the revenue estimate, but the budget itself, and make tweaks to that. And I think the Board of Education members need to understand that they are an important part of the budgeting process and not merely a rubber stamp for a superintendent.
Where in our culture do we see 75% support for any one thing through an elective? I mean, what things get 75% support in our politics these days?
Term limits.
Yes, yes, bingo. very few things.
Thoroughbred Dog Day.
And Mr. President, I share that because this, line 131 of the bill, local boards of education are authorized to request information from local school system administrators. So as an individual member of a school board, if I'm being told, this is just one of the things you're saying is taken out of this model ethics code, if I'm being told that it's consistent with my ethics code, and ethics is a big word, that I can't ask for information from administrators, I mean, the ability to look at my voters and say that I've heard you. I mean, 581. If 581 is not a picture, one of my counties voted 73% in support of 581 as a mechanism to cap not all of our taxes. 70% of the taxes can rise and fall with the rates of property. As values go up. But just for the 30% of the digest that's a homestead, so a very small part, just a normal cost of living allowance as a limitation. And when a county was 73%, and you see a 4-1 vote on a school board saying, no, we're not going to accept that constraint, we're going to stand directly against what the thoughtful citizens say, is shaking to me. Now, I'm not here to prosecute a case, Mr. Chairman. There's a whole lot more I'd like to say. I just appreciate this because I think if you look at the efficacy of our school boards with respect to the public support that exists out there, thoughtful public sentiment, if we really ask folks, the informed people, their thoughts, it would shake the foundations of our school systems. And I think they're not being heard. I'd like to thank you for your bill.
I just want to clarify, I agree with everything you just said. I just want to make sure that I'm clear that everything that's listed starting at line 97 is relative to the school board training, not the ethics code. So the only thing that we did in here relative to the ethics code was open the door for taxpayers to file a complaint. But the list of things here does not make its way into the model ethics code.
Thanks for that clarification.
It's for the training that they undergo when they get elected. So we're trying to get upstream of some of the training and just make sure that the training is reflective of what I think the will of most Georgians would be.
What number are you? Senator Parent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Senator. Just a couple questions. First of all, in terms of the section that you were just referencing about the training requirement, or yes, shall include but not be limited to the following topics.
Mm-hmm.
Who came up with this particular list?
So that was a conversation with people that have been on school boards, people that are currently on school boards, conversation with Georgia School Board Association, conversation with Legislative Council relative to other things that are referenced in the code as it relates to the requirements of school boards and their duties. And that's everybody that I can think of that we talked to.
Okay, I would be curious, and I can ask you offline, what school board members, it's just, I've never been on a school board. I know we do have a couple members who have, but
Yeah.
I'm just curious to know whose input was sort of,
I think probably
taken
the
into
most
account
valuable input,
because,
honestly, was from GSBA because they're the ones that are currently doing the bulk of the training in the state.
Mm-hmm.
And we had some things that we didn't include, and they agreed in our meeting that we had that the things that were included here did cover. In fact, they were concerned that maybe there was too much included here, but they did not think that there's nothing on here that they believe should have been eliminated.
Thank you. I have just a couple more, if you don't mind. So, but this training will not be required. So it's an exhaustive list, but it will not be required.
No, I'm sorry if I was unclear on that. The year after your election, you will still be required to have 15 hours of training.
And it's after that it will not be required.
Currently, we have continuing ed that is in years 2, 3, and 4 that we would be getting rid of and just having the 15-year training stay in place.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. And then the last question I have is, I don't really know, I'm over on, starting at line 126, on the things that they shall not include. So the sentences from the clauses, the subparagraph clauses, make sense in terms of the way you would read them like a sentence, except for V. So I just wanted to point that out, that it doesn't actually, the sentence doesn't make sense when you get to that one. But that's really not the important point. The important thing I'm wondering about here, where it says that you, again, I can't exactly tell what it says because it doesn't flow, but expressing opinions in support.
Can I just pause you and ask, what don't you think flows about shall not include any of the following statements, recommendations, or suggestions in
Expressing it, it doesn't
opinions?
say what you would do. Whereas, see, you've got that, blah, 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 blah. That's a drafting thing. But so in terms of expressing opinions in support of or in opposition to past, pending, or future legislation affecting public schools or local school systems, I think that's would be a First Amendment violation. I don't really see how that would be possible to say that the folks on the school boards cannot talk to us or, other elected officials about how things might impact.
That's not what we're saying. What we're saying is that in the training cannot be essentially, to take it to the extreme of what I've heard happens in some of these trainings, the training cannot be a rallying cry or a bash session of the QBE funding formula, or things that the General Assembly did in a previous session, or things that the General Assembly should do, or that I'm making this one up just for, that the teachers' raises should have been $100,000 and not $12,000. So we are not telling them that the boards cannot discuss or the boards cannot say it. We are saying that in the training, the trainers shall not stand up and essentially pontificate on their opinions as it relates to what they think the General Assembly should or should not be doing. Because that is completely unrelated to the job of a Board of Education member.
Well, actually, Senator, I firmly disagree with you on that, as a
You
matter
think
of
that in order
fact.
to be an effective Board of Education member, they need to be trained on one person's opinion?
No, but I mean, you just said basically, it says expressing opinions. I mean, look, if someone was like, look, I think the QBE formula really works and here's why. Or someone else says, hey, you know what, we don't have technology in the QBE formula, or we're one of only 6 states that don't have some sort of weight for lower income students. I mean, I just don't think that's
The
out
second
of
two
bounds.
things that you said are not an opinion, they're a fact. The first thing you said is an opinion.
Well, historical, I don't agree with that. It says factual historical information. That's not what I
Correct. I
just
think you
said.
should probably read the full sentence, which is provided, however, that providing factual historical information shall not constitute an impermissible expression of an opinion.
Saying that maybe, this formula was passed in 1980 or whatever, 85. That would it be included, but the other things I said would not.
No,
And anyway,
you
it
said
doesn't- we don't need to
you
fight
said
about it.
technology fund is not included in the QBE funding formula. That is not an opinion. That is a fact. So it would not be caught in the net of what is not excluded. And I forget what the third thing was that you mentioned.
Okay, I don't need to ask anymore. I firmly disagree that is a good thing to have in this legislation. That makes no sense. Thank you.
All right, any other questions?
One of them. Yeah, if I could, Mr. Chairman.
What number are you?
Number 2. Chairman Dozal, looking at the model code of ethics that you're requiring to be put in here, and my understanding is this code of ethics would have to be codified by the state Board of Education, is that right?
So I'm not adding anything here to the state.
I'm looking at line 43.
We're not
going
creating a
down.
new code.
Right.
Currently, the way that it works is the State Board of Education promulgates a model code of ethics.
Right.
And we're not changing anything with that model code of ethics other than to say that citizens need to be included in the people who are able to file a complaint. I should say citizens residing in that district over the age of 18.
And what ramifications are there when citizens are not allowed to do that currently?
I think it creates a very interesting situation on a board where the only people, regardless of the level of malfeasance, able to bring an ethics complaint are the fellow board members.
No, I agree with you. I'm just saying, the school board prevents that. You have a code of ethics. Right now, if somebody files a complaint, they file it to the superintendent. Is that right?
No, right now, under the model code of ethics, a citizen is not a person that can file a complaint unless they're a citizen who's on the Board of Education.
Okay, and under yours, where would they file the complaint to?
Under this currently would be the
Against a school board member?
superintendent, but only because that's the catch-all currently for and we may have
The
discussed.
local
this
school board?
Correct.
The local superintendent?
Yes.
Okay. Something that the senator and I from Albany have been working on is a county, not my county. She doesn't represent it as a senator, but it is her county. I mean, she's got property and she bled and sweat there. So my understanding under current, and the superintendent and the school board are in lockstep in preventing citizens from having a voice in front of the school board. So does this change any of that, or is there anything current in your research that gives a citizen the right to file a formal complaint against a school board member? The governor's office, there has to be an indictment or some kind of criminal action for the governor's office to be engaged.
There is not anything that I know of in the current code, and I know there's not anything in the current model code of ethics that requires citizens to be able to file a complaint.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
So that's the core of what this is doing.
Very good.
There may be other things that we may want to address at some point in the future with the model code of ethics, or even have one that's in the statute. I don't know, but the only thing that happens here is essentially opens the door for
Well,
taxpayers.
I think it's a great first step. I appreciate that.
Going back to Senator Parent's question, I'm going to go to line 134. Why would we recommend that trainers not train board members that they should lobby the General Assembly? Like, wouldn't that be good practice for them to advocate for things that are important to their schools and students?
I don't think that it should be part of the training that you are told that you should lobby. If you want to be told that you can lobby, absolutely. I think that the problem is that line 134, 135 often get coupled with lines 136 to 139, and what you have is a person. And by the way, they're often a superintendent that do these trainings. So to get to this tension, a lot of times you have a superintendent that comes in a room, maybe not a member of the training entity, but they come in and they do a 30-minute segment in the course of this 15-hour training. And the next thing you know, the 14 and a half hours of good work is kind of off the rails because you have one person injecting their opinion and sort of a call to arms, if you will, trying to assert their opinion onto these newly elected Board of Education members and providing their opinion. In my opinion, and it flows into this bill, we want to tell people, the newly elected Board of Education members, what their job is and how to do their job. And it may be that part of their job eventually leads to them having conversations with their local delegation or the General Assembly at large. We're not telling them that they can't do that. We're just telling them, we're saying in this bill that part of the training should not be, you need to go lobby the General Assembly.
But if
Or
I
you should
can-
go lobby the General Assembly, to be fair to the language.
Yeah. I think that with any educator, it would be encouraged to speak to your elected official. So I have concerns with saying they should not be trained to lobby, because any sound educator, even educator, if there are issues that is impacting their school district, then I think that they should be encouraged to lobbyists, because ultimately a lot of decisions that are impacting the policies that they have to put in place are coming from us.
I understand your perspective on that. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To take off on the gentleman's line of questioning, I would, in reading back through this, for those who are reading this bill, you referred to line 134 and 135. What's happening in the training is what's being promulgated by the state by law. Hey, you've got to do the training, and we're promoting a series of things that are taught and things that are not taught. If the gentleman's concern is that they ought to be taught to that local boards of education should therefore lobby members of the General Assembly, if that's being taught as a positive duty, responsibility of a school board member, but yet you're being taught you're not authorized to request information from school administrators, and you're being taught that you're to defer the superintendent on all budget and tax matters, it seems just radically out of step to say, hey, lobby your member of the General Assembly, but don't ask for information. Lobby your member of the General Assembly, but defer to your superintendent on all things related to, a multi-million-dollar budget. It just seems, to the point of the bill, it seems insane that we're going to expect them to defer on these things, but yet we also want them to be lobbyists. It just seems out of sorts. That, again, I think it's appropriate to take that off the table. Let's, Mr. Chairman, and to the author, I think your list is good. If they get into lobbying members of the General Assembly, that's fine. But I think to suggest that they're taught to do it, as it stands today, it's your job to do this. If this bill doesn't pass, it's going to continue to be taught. It's their job to lobby the members of the General Assembly, and it's being taught it's their job not to ask for information from administrators. They're being taught to not challenge the superintendent, but to defer on budget matters. These things, as it stands today, seem way out of line with expectations. It's hard to imagine that we would want that to continue. So I commend the gentleman. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion at proper time.
We've still got this question.
A little bit more. Because I really like where we're going with this. There needs to be some changes taking place. But you think about the many mandates sometimes that we
Decree.
yeah, to teachers and other professions, okay? And every year before coming back to the General Assembly, we meet with our local school officials throughout the district, throughout my district of 13 counties. What are your needs? What are your wants? If you have a superintendent who is aloof and not really engaged in the, because all of the appropriations come from us, pretty much. All of the mandates, the state mandates, because we're always, here today, someplace else next year and the next year, and even thinking about the training aspects of it. Those, you get it the first year you're there, but if there are new mandates coming down, who's going to pass this on? Sometimes superintendents that are really good at what they do will do it, but I have some in my district that are just sitting there, drawing a check. And I'm very open about this because I have a passion for education. And we are doing a major disservice to our children if we do not hold these people accountable. My friend across the room, we're talking now about the state needs to take over this school district, totally. Get rid of the board and get rid of the superintendent because they are both complicit in how our children are losing their academic focus because I was going to say crooks, but I'm not going to say that. But, and it's such a disservice to our children. But, if we could, kind of look at that, it has to be done. We're the lifeline and the last, line of defense for these children? We are. It's bad. You might not have it in your district, but in some of our districts, it's not good. It's not pretty.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we have a couple of questions. We have comments. So we're just going to take those. Justin Pauley, if you'd like to come to the podium. Go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman, committee members, for allowing us to be able to speak to Senate Bill 4. I'm Justin Pauley with the Georgia School Boards Association. I'd also like to thank Senator Dolezal for affording GSBA the opportunity to discuss this bill with him and take a look at some adjustments. Just wanted to address very quickly a few areas of the bill. On the ethics in line 48 through 52, a number of efforts have been made to create a process to address allegations around local school board members' actions. Enforcement of code of ethics was an issue even before the extensive 2010 legislation to overhaul local board governance. Two issues typically arise, and neither have ever been worked out. First, members of the local board are constitutionally elected officials. Therefore, what penalties can be set for violation? Second, as members of a board, they must act as a body. What process or consequences can be created that would improve their effectiveness rather than exacerbate the problem? We suggest any complaint process require it to be filed with the board chair rather than the superintendent, who's the employee of the board, or at least concurrently, both receiving that complaint. In conjunction with any clarification or changes made in this section, 20-2-51E may need to be addressed for enforcement of the affidavit of candidates. In the training, lines 91 through 93 and 147 through 163, This bill would limit requiring training to newly elected board members and to those serving in a district on the financial high-risk list. GSBA believes training is a best practice to ensure high-functioning school boards and school board members who can prioritize student achievement and success. GSBA aligns all of its curriculum to the State Board of Education's standards for effective governance of Georgia school systems. GSBA also believes that school boards should be engaged, involved in the process of governing the school system by holding the superintendent accountable, asking questions, and obtaining information to vote on items brought before the board. There's nothing more important to a highly effective organization than leaders understanding their roles and responsibilities and that of each other. New board members are inundated with massive amounts of information in their training, some of which may occur before they've even ever attended a board meeting. Hearing and seeing information is very different from working within the confines of that information and being responsible for implementing it or holding others accountable for it. Follow-up training is needed. Laws and regulations regarding their work change, and they need to know what has changed and how to address it. Many also want to know why. New board members frequently want to know why something is a requirement, and answering those questions would be limited according to lines 136 through 139. It's important to be able to tell a group of elected officials that they should speak to their legislators for help with an issue or understanding actions taken, but these actions are limited as well. Advocating on behalf of their students, employees, and community members is fundamentally part of their job. It is important that their legislators know the potential local impact of proposals. 20-2-49 speaks to the board duties requiring specialized skills and training and to the specialized nature and unique role of membership on a local board. GSBA believes that enactment of that requires regular professional development and staying current on the regulatory environment. We are willing to help in any way to work with you, the State Board of Education, and any others to address your concerns, and we appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. What number are you again? All right.
Thank you. I apologize, sir. Tell me your organization again.
The Georgia School Boards Association.
What tax designation do y'all have?
We're nonprofit.
You're a nonprofit?
Yes, sir.
And your membership is made up of who?
School board members.
And you mentioned something earlier about y'all were working on, prior to 2010, I think, that y'all were looking at ways to dealing with school board members who were not carrying out their duties in the way that they should, or handling complaints, or?
No, sir. Our organization did not. That was an effort from the General Assembly to establish, as Senator Dolezal said, all these hours of training, the requirements, the code of ethics, and the conflicts of interest policies.
What's your role in the organization?
My role? I'm the Director for Policy and Governmental Relations.
Right now, is it your understanding that the only way a school board member could be removed would be through a recall election or by the governor upon indictment or accusation of a crime?
Yes, sir. And then there's also a provision in the law that if a school board is on the level of losing accreditation, the governor can remove them, the entire board as well.
Is there any mechanism within DOE, Georgia DOE, to where a school board could lose their accreditation?
Through DOE?
Through budgetary malfeasance or audits?
I think there's some provisions that the state board can withhold money, I believe.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And next, we have Heather Tully-Bauer.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you so much for this opportunity. First, I'll just let you know that I am just a citizen. I am a longtime listener, first-time caller, don't have a badge. I'm just here for myself. But I thank you so much for this opportunity because I largely support this bill, but I'm advocating for some fixes. I love that it identifies the board's role in policymaking and that it makes clear that the boards need to hold superintendents accountable. And I love that it even includes taxpayers taxpayers in the role of being able to file ethics complaints. A lot has already been talked about ethics. I also have concerns that starting as a taxpayer, starting an ethics complaint with the superintendent when he is subordinate to the board seems to not make a lot of sense to me, especially because this is a bill that is really taking a lot of time to really define the role of the board as it relates to the superintendent and vice versa. Also, I really appreciate that this is including really spelling out how the board is supposed to be, or at least spelling out that the board really is responsible for holding the superintendent accountable. I wish it said exactly what mechanisms should be used in which to do that. The reason I say that is because there is a bill out there, I don't know it, but that does say that superintendents need to be evaluated annually, but it doesn't say how. And ask any teacher how they are evaluated. Their written tool is comprehensive, and I would really love to see that a superintendent who is a high-paid employee that he or she be expected to live up to all kinds of metrics, not just the strength of the academics of our school, but also how did they engage parents and use of taxpayer money. But most of all, what I feel like I would like to advocate for is that this bill, in no bill, really speaks to one other really important role of our local school board, and that is the fiduciary responsibilities. Oftentimes, we have school boards that, they want our money but not our opinions, as Senator Setzler, mentioned, that public input is really kind of eroded, and I really appreciate that. We have school districts that make large financial decisions without any public input, lacking transparency. Public hearings are often held on the same day as votes. I have a lot of examples of how it works in my district, and I just feel like y'all, I really appreciate you all understanding that the taxpayer has really been squeezed out of a lot of these processes, including in my district, it's a $1.85 billion budget, and we don't even get to ask questions of our local school board or our district administrators explaining the bill to us. They used to have that language in policy, and last year they removed that language because they weren't doing it anyway. So as I close, I'm just going to say this. I just want you to understand this. My school district had a policy that said that before the budget is approved, the $1.85 billion budget that is largely paid through local tax dollars, before it was approved, the policy used to state that they would seek answers or seek questions from the public and provide answers. They removed that language from the policy because they were not doing it anyway. And so now there is no mechanism in which we get to ask questions about the budget that we are funding. We need something in place, whether it be through this bill, an amendment, or something else out there, but this is the bill in front of us that gives us more of a voice. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate you. I don't know if anybody has questions. I'm hoping not. I'm praying not, but I'm here in case.
Any questions from the committee?
What county are you from?
Cobb County.
Thank you. All right, any further discussion in the committee? Okay, we'll let's go ahead and vote on the bill and then come back to it.
Motion to pass.
A motion to pass? Second. Second? Okay, now we'll accept the minutes.
I think that we still accomplish the goal of this legislation if we remove lines 134 through 139. So I would offer that as an amendment.
134
through 139.
through 139. So we're local boards of education or members of, or employees thereof should lobby the Georgia General Assembly on any topic or expressing opinions in support or in opposition to past, pending, or future litigation affecting public schools or local school systems, provided, however, that providing factual or historical information shall not be constitute an impermissible expression of an opinion.
Second, and can I make a couple?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I mean, my fear on this is that it sounds like from your testimony, Senator Dolezal, that you're aware of some trainings that sort of went off the rails in a direction of advocacy that you probably disagreed with, which I can understand would be irritating. My fear is that this is sort of like a far too blunt an instrument. There's no way to, forgive the term, micromanage from right here exactly what school systems and teachers and boards are going to talk about. And frankly, that's as it should be. And I do agree with the senator's amendment. I'll just say simply because I have my job and I try to do my best at it and take in information. I don't serve on a school board. I was on the phone with my school board member for an hour yesterday talking about some things. I value what she knows that I don't, because I'm not in those rooms, right? And it's actually not my job to run the DeKalb County Schools, and it's hers. So I feel that the overly blunt instrument here goes too far in the other direction. I know you probably didn't mean for that, but that's certainly the impression it gives off, and I think that's very dangerous for us to meddle at that level. So,
Well, and I would add
you.
on top, just for the community to understand, you know, and having worked for the state for 30 years, there in state policy for Department of Juvenile Justice anyway, I'm sure it is with other state agencies, that in order for you to have coordination with a legislator, you had to get permission from the agency to which I worked for to have any political activity or involvement. There was a form you had to fill out
Wow.
to be able to do that. So, I mean, it's not something that's, you know, I just know this has been common practice in our state and other entities, of course, so I'm just making the committee aware of that.
I think, appreciate the gentleman, my seatmate's amendment. I don't know that I agree with it, because I think the effect of the amendment, it would allow the training, which you've got, you have an entity whose authority is promulgated by the state, by the legislature, you shall do the training, to people who have been elected by their locals. If the amendment passes, the following will continue. That in the training, they will express opinions in support of or in opposition to past, pending, or future legislation of schools, public schools, statewide, local systems, that provided factual information shall not constitute impermissible expression, but that if this amendment passes, they can continue to express opinions of past policy actions, and that the local boards, these people in the training will continue, if the amendment passes, to be told it's your job to lobby the General Assembly. And I think the gentleman's effort with the bill is to say the purpose of training is not to exhort people to lobby, and it's not to empower them to share their opinions about policy. And I think if the amendment passes, those practices will continue. That's my concern.
If I may, this is not saying that it's their job to, it's saying that they should lobby. Like, you can if you want. It's not saying you're required to.
I understand.
And then also, in terms of expressing opinions, like this, if it stands as it is, a trainer could say it is a mistake that the General Assembly has not updated QBE, and they'll be in trouble for saying that, when that is directly impacting a school district. And to say, you know what, you should talk to your elected officials about that. Like, they're the ones that make that decision. And if it stands, they can't say that.
Okay, let's go ahead and do this because we're fixing to lose members. So you want to offer your amendment?
He did. He got a second.
Yeah.
He did, and he has a second.
Offered it.
I'll call the question. Move the question.
Okay. So all those in favor, you want to restate the amendment?
Okay. My amendment is to strike lines 134 through 139, strike where it says that local boards of education or members or employees thereof should lobby the General Assembly on any topic or expressing opinions in support of or in opposition to past, present, or future legislation affecting public schools or local school systems, provided, however, that providing factual historical information shall not constitute an impermissible expression of.
All right, thank you. Any other discussion? All right, all those,
If I have a comment, if that's okay.
yes, sir.
I think we're about to vote your amendment down, but I will work with you on language, if we can come to an agreement on language that would allow things like the training to say, hey, a lot of districts do an annual pre-legislative breakfast, and we would recommend that you do that. I don't know that that would be captured in the net of this right now. I think that we can probably clean that up, but certainly what we're trying to get rid of here is essentially these 30-minute bash sessions from these superintendents that my voters have no clue who they are, but they're training the people that I voted for, and vice versa, right? And to Senator Parent's point, this gets rid of it from both sides of a political spectrum. It gets the opinions out of the training, focuses on what their job should be, and allows the opinion gathering to happen outside of the mandated training. They're going to hear plenty of opinions, regardless if it's in the training or not.
All right, to call, yes,
Okay, so we're gonna vote on that amendment. And all I wanted was just, if there's a complaint filed, do not give it to the superintendent.
Let's do that one next.
Okay, okay.
all right.
We'll have to add that somewhere.
We're just going to vote
All right.
this amendment down. And then we'll maybe have your amendment.
All right, to call the question, all those in favor of the amendment to LC 492201S as presented, please raise your hand. All those opposed?
And I do want to note that as much as I love him, Senator Robertson is not a member of this committee. I know we have an ex officio letter, but just so people understand.
And I want to point out so people understand, I'm an ex officio
No, I know.
member of this committee. I just want to be clear.
But
I
so the
was
public
aware- I was aware of
understands.
that.
Yes.
As a stand-in for Senator Hickman, who's not here today.
Thank you.
All right,
That's right, just so the public knows.
the amendment fails. So let's next move. You had an amendment you would like to add?
But I don't know where we need to add it. I just wanted to say, is there anywhere you think?
I'd be happy to make an amendment.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Is that we do not file those complaints or that complaint with the superintendent.
On line 50? So
Yeah.
what if we strike the word superintendent and insert the word system? I know there was a recommendation that it could be the board chair. I'm okay to defer that decision to the State Board of Education, but require,
State board.
that would allow them to,
A
the
neutral
code could be
party.
silent.
A neutral party, please.
So then you may want to preclude the superintendent with the local school system, provided that it not be the superintendent.
I do,
Because what could happen is that we could say system here, and the state board could have the model ethics actually go to the superintendent, unless we preclude it.
okay, well, let's find somebody. Go ahead and write.
You want to take a stab at that, Counselor? I would change that to say with the local school system, striking superintendent, comma,
Which,
provided,
Which line?
line 50. Provided that such complaints shall not be, provided that the superintendent shall not be the receiver of such a complaint.
I mean, you could do that, you could just have it go to the chair of the board.
okay, here we
That
go.
would solve that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't say it. File a complaint.
If the board chairs.
Yeah, Michael's there, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they should have some mechanism for how
Why are
complaints
you
are
gonna sit
handled,
up there, Michael?
right?
Your board chair gets rid of the.
Yeah, I mean, that's, yeah,
But if
that's
you're
how
a
it should
tiny,
be.
tiny district, most times, you don't.
It's not gonna see the light of day, is what you're saying.
Exactly.
But you can't, I don't know that we can make
You understand
provision
the
for
quandary?
any of it, every
You wanna
Would you like to sit in
eventuality.
the corner, Michael?
Thoughts about the Professional Standards Commission?
I'd be open to that.
I didn't hear you.
The Professional Standards Commission.
Oh, that's fine.
That'd be great.
That's good.
If you say the system, it's going to default to the superintendent.
You should have clapped or something back there so we knew you were here.
Would you like to repeat that, Michael, please, into the microphone there?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would recommend that the amendment read line 50, replacing with the local school superintendent, replacing that with the Professional Standards Commission.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor of that change, please raise your hand.
I mean, we will probably need to determine whether that's something they feel they can take on. Because it's wide open, isn't it? Any way you
They
do it,
will-
it's wide
They
open.
will, in all likelihood, refer that complaint back to the school system, but at least what you've done is filed it with an independent body that has a record of it and will
Okay.
forward it
Yeah,
to
and
the
then they
school
have to
system.
figure out how they're gonna sort of handle intake and not get overwhelmed by some deluge of frivolous
Correct.
harassing complaints, which can happen if you don't have a system set up to weed that out. Usually counsel on the front end.
All right, now that we have an amended bill, and this will be LC 492201S as amended, and we have a motion
By committee substitute.
by committee substitute,
As amended.
and we have a motion and a second. We're going to call the vote. All those in favor of the bill as amended, please raise your right
By
hand.
committee substitute.
By committee substitute. 1, 2. And all those opposed? And the measure passes. And Senator Dozal, I apologize, but I didn't realize we were going to run that long on that bill. And because of that, we have a judiciary committee that's been held up for us, and I know that there are several on this committee that serve on judiciary, so we're going to have to hold your other bill to a later meeting, if that's
Understood.
okay with you.
Understood. Thank you, members of the committee.
And having no other business for this committee, we will call this meeting adjourned. Thank you all for being here.
Is that 3:07?